In this lesson, we'll learn how to edit video clips using adjustment layers and smart filters in the video timeline panel. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so now that we've had the opportunity to become better acquainted with the timeline panel here in Photoshop, we can begin to explore adding additional visual edits. So you'll notice we have a group titled Video Group 1, and within this group we have a couple of clips, one of a city street and the other video clip of a waving flag. Let's go ahead and explore adding an adjustment layer to our waving flag clip. So we can either click on the layer in the layers panel or the clip itself. They both highlight each other when you do that. And so now we can come over here in our layers panel, and at the bottom you'll notice there's this button that looks like a divided circle. If we click on that, we'll get a drop-down menu that gives us some different adjustment layers that we can add to our video clip. And let's go ahead and try levels. Okay, now we're taken to our levels dialog box where we can basically come in here and kind of play around with some of these different sliders, maybe adjusting the whites of those clouds, maybe kind of adjusting some of those midtones. If we jump back to our layers panel, we can see that that adjustment layer has been added above our waving flag video clip layer. And you'll also notice there's this little arrow pointing downwards. That basically means that this adjustment layer has been clipped to our waving flag layer, meaning those changes, those edits that we made with our levels will only affect our waving flag video clip. So now we could click play and we can see that that adjustment layer affects the entire clip. Now, what if we want to add an adjustment layer to an area that is very specific? We don't want to affect the entire scene, okay? Well, let's go ahead and explore that on our city street clip. So we're going to go ahead and drag our current time indicator over there to our city street clip. And again, we'll go ahead and let's this time add curves as an adjustment layer. And we'll just go ahead just kind of darken up the whole scene there. Alright, so let's say we only want that curve adjustment layer to really affect the sky area of our scene. Well, you'll notice that these adjustment layers come with a mask, alright? And so we can basically mask out areas that we don't want the adjustment layer to affect. So we can very easily grab our brush tool over here in our tool panel and making sure we have black as our foreground color, using just a soft round brush in this case, we can begin to mask out areas that we don't want those curves to affect. And so you can see that reflected in the thumbnail of the mask, of the layer mask for our adjustment layer. Now, if you wanted to get very precise with this, you could make a very fine knit selection around the entire skyline there of those buildings to get a nice perfect mask. But in this case, a soft round brush illustrates the point nicely. We can actually turn off the visibility just to kind of see what areas are still affected, and we can go ahead and play that clip and you can see that it affects the entire clip. So that's just a nice added level of control. And what's great about an adjustment layer is that you can continually adjust it just by double clicking on the icon for that adjustment layer. You can come back in and make any kind of tweaks that you want on either one of those adjustment layers. Let's now talk about smart filters. We'll go ahead and jump back to our waving flag. Again, just clicking on the video clip there, highlighting it, also highlighting its respective layer. So what we could do is we could come up to filter here at the top of our interface, and we could try, say, this oil paint filter. And this, of course, takes us to the dialog box for this oil paint filter and some of the settings that we could play around with. Let's just go ahead and click OK for the time being. And there we can see the oil paint has been applied, but there is a problem. If we scrub backwards or forwards, you'll notice that that filter has only affected that particular layer in which our current, or that particular frame that our current timeline indicator was on. And so you don't want to go frame by frame adding the same filter over and over. You'd be there all night. So let's go ahead and take a step back and approach it from a smart filter aspect. So just again making sure we're on our waving flag layer. Go ahead and bring our current time indicator over. This time we'll come back up to filter at the top of our Photoshop interface, and you'll notice where it says convert for smart filters. Okay, and so we're going to be given a dialog box that says, hey, we need to convert this waving flag layer into a smart object. And we're going to talk in a little bit more detail in the next lesson about what smart objects are, but basically it allows us to manipulate these pixels continuously without there being any loss in quality, the pixels that basically make up either an object or, in this case, a video. Okay, so what we want to do now is look over here at our layers panel, and you'll notice that the icon in the bottom corner of the thumbnail for that layer has changed, basically indicating that this is now a smart object. So what we can do now is come back up to filter, and we'll go ahead and try oil paint again. And again, we could come over here and really play around with the overall settings of this oil paint. Let's go ahead and click OK. And we can see that oil paint has very much been applied to our waving flag scene, and if we scrub through or even play, we can see that that filter has been applied to the entire scene. Now, you may be asking yourself, can I apply a smart filter to a specific area, much like we did with an adjustment layer? Of course you can. What if you just want to apply it to this flag by itself? You can, but the obstacle you have to overcome is that that flag is moving. So on every frame, it looks a little different. So how could we get around this? We could, on every single frame, on that layer mask, mask out everything around that flag. That would take a long time. It would be very tedious. There is a less tedious approach that you could take. Still, it's tedious, but again, less tedious. So let's go ahead and take a step back. Okay, so our waving flag layer there. So what we can do is grab our quick selection tool over here in our tool panel. And the quick selection tool generally does a pretty good job of selecting the information that I want it to select. In this case, it should work very nicely, given that this flag just stands out very nicely against its background. So once we've made that selection of the flag, we can right-click within the selection, and then we can go to Layer via Copy. Okay. And so what this does, if we zoom out on our timeline, is it adds a copy of just that selection, just that flag, to our video group 1. Now what we want to do is drag the layer for that copy out of video group 1. Then we're going to drag it and it'll snap to our current time indicator. And then we want to scale it down, or trim it down rather, until it's just one frame. Basically it's just on that one singular frame. So just zooming way in there to see that. Now what we can do is add that oil paint filter. In this case, it's really not necessary to make it a smart object. You can if you want to, but we'll just go ahead and apply oil paint again. And so we can see on that one frame, that oil paint is being basically taking place there, and it's just happening on that copied selection. Let's zoom out here. And so what you could do is just continually repeat this process. Again, it would take a long time, but it's easier than having to constantly erase on the mask. So if we come back again one more time to our waving flag layer, we could grab, again moving forward, again to the next frame, we grab our quick mask tool and just do the same thing. Make a selection of the flag, right click, layer via copy, and we want to pull that copy out of group 1. Let's zoom way out. We'll bring that over to where it snaps to that frame in which we made the copy, and then we'll trim it all the way down to where it's just on that frame, and then we'll add oil paint once again. So you can see how we already have a couple of frames where we have that oil paint oil paint filter taking effect. So it's a tedious process, but it would be less tedious again if you had to mask out everything around the sky on every single frame of a smart filter. So these are just a few ways that you can use adjustment layers and smart filters in conjunction with your video clips in the video timeline. So in the next lesson, we're going to learn about animating with keyframes in the video timeline, and we're going to actually again convert an object to a smart object, or an image in this case that we're going to be using into a smart object. So stick around and we'll see you in the next lesson.